Back to this new episode of the Therapy Room with Javi. I'm your host, Javier Gomez. I'm a licensed professional counselor here in Chicago, Illinois, and I'm so excited to be here with all of you today because we're going to be talking about something so important in our relationship, something that I see every single day as a couples therapist in my practice. So, we're going to be talking about why we keep having the same fight over and over again with our partners. And we're going to be exploring it from an emotionally focused therapy lens, an EFT lens, and we're going to be talking about what are some things that we can do in our relationship to change and shift the dynamic and why we keep having the same fight over and over again. So I'm so excited to have you guys here for the episode of today. As always, if you like this episode, please comment, like, share, subscribe to my channel, to the podcast, wherever you're listening to. And well, let's get started with the episode of today. As always, before we begin, remember that this content is intended only for educational and informational purposes only. It is designed to support understand the recurring conflict patterns in intimate relationships through this lens of an EFT therapy lens. This content is by no means a substitute for couples therapy, individual therapy, crisis intervention, diagnosis, or any individualized mental health care. If you are experiencing high conflict, emotional distress, concerns related to safety, abuse, trauma, or relationship instability, please seek support from a mental health professional or an appropriate local resources. Remember, this content is only for psychoeducational purposes only. Okay, why did I choose this topic? Why did I choose to create this video today? Like I said in the intro at the beginning, every single day I see in my office a few couples that come with this idea, and their main recurring problem of coming to therapy is this idea that they keep having the same fight over and over again. And a lot of couples come in my office with so much shame and blame and hopelessness because they keep having the same fight. It sounds like the same fight, even though it's maybe about the dishes or it's about the car or the groceries or about going with their family or about whatever it is that it is about. The core of the fight is always the same. They keep coming back again with the same fight, and we keep fighting the same way with our partners. Now, recurring conflict, right, does not automatically mean that there is incompatibility, that there's lack of love, that there's poor communication skills, right? So many couples come to my office with this idea of teach us how to communicate better and then we'll fix our relationship, right? Or we love each other. He's the love of my life or she's the love of my life, but we just can't seem to communicate. And it's not about communication. I mean, it matters, right? And of course, that's a whole nother video for a whole nother topic. Communication does matter, and we can't resolve the dynamic if we cannot talk about it, right? Or we can solve the problem if cannot talk about it. But deep down, something else is going on. And this recurring fight often signals attachment distress, emotional insecurity, and a protective interaction pattern that's happening between the people that are in the relationship. Now, why did I decide to create this video? Because by doing so, my hope is that we can reduce blame, shame, hopelessness, and we can reduce the stigma of being in this romantic relationship. So if you're out here listening to me, watching this video, I hope this resonates. I hope that this gives you a framework and gives you hope in your relationship because I know you keep having the same fight over and over again, but this doesn't mean that there's a lack of love. And so many of my clients in the first session in couples therapy, I tell them, I see how much love you have for each other. So much so that you're here. So much so that you're willing to put in the work and have tough conversations, right? So much so that you're watching this video, that you're listening to this podcast because you know how much you love your partner And I know you know how much you want to change the cycle and you don't want to be stuck in the cycle. So this is why I decided to create this video. I hope this resonates. Um, Let's get started with a little bit of the basics. I think maybe that would be something important for us. So, what's a framework that we're going to be using today is based on emotionally focused therapy. And this is an evidence-based approach to couples therapy. It was developed by Dr. Sue Johnson, and it is grounded in attachment theory. EFT, which is the school that I learned how to do couples therapy from, helps us understand recurring interaction cycles. It helps us to identify underlying emotions and attachment needs. It reduces blame, it reduces defensiveness. And Dr. Sue Johnson's idea behind EFT was to create this emotional safety and this secure connection between partners. Now, the focus is not on who's right, but rather on strengthening this emotional bond. Something that happens a lot in my couples therapy sessions is that a lot of my couples come with this idea of you're going to be the mediator, therefore, you're going to tell us who's right and who's wrong. And we're going to give you all of the arguments and we're going to present the case. And something that I tell the couples is that it doesn't matter who's right and who's wrong. One, because I'm not a judge, and two, right, because this is not a productive conversation into helping the dynamic and helping the relationship in general, right? So for only for today, if it's just while you're watching this video, I would like for you to take off these glasses of who's right, who's wrong in this dynamic, and rather listen with these compassionate ears, right? This compassion and glasses around understanding why we keep going back into the same cycle and the same dynamic. We're going to be talking today a lot about the cycle, right? You're going to hear me say this a lot. And Dr. Sue Johnson, one of the things that she said was, we have to get the couple to see the cycle as a problem, not each other. Whew. That that intervention has been one of the most successful interventions I've had with my couples in my work that I do every single day. Because if we get to see that the cycle is a problem, then we reduce blame, then we reduce shame, then we are able to soften to each other and we normalize an experience that every single couple, or I would like to say 88% of the couples experience, right? So with that framework, let's understand what happens in the conflict. So, conflict activates attachment. Attachment bonds help us regulate our nervous system. And when connection feels threatened, the body immediately perceives danger. Stress hormones increase, reactivity rises, right? And the core question that's underneath subconsciously interacting in the dynamic is, are you there for me? Right? That's what's happening. When you feel like your partner withdraws, when you feel like your partner is not there for you, right? When that connection feels threatened, then all of this is happening, even if we don't recognize it, right? Immediately we notice the pit in our stomach that we're feeling. Immediately fear just or anxiety just spikes all over our body, right? The stress hormones increase, our activity rises, right? And then we escalate. This is what happens when conflict is happening in our relationship and in our dynamic. Now let's understand a little bit the cycle, right? When I talk about cycle, this is what I mean. And this is, I'm not doing it justice. There is for sure through EFT a much more intense diagram and dynamic, but I wanted us to start with the basics of the protest and withdrawal cycle that's happening in our dynamic in general. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. So let's start over here with disconnection, right? There is a perceived disconnection that's happening in the relationship, and it can be as simple as, I know John Gottman, the Gottmans call it bids for connection, right? It can be as a missed bid for connection, right? Let's say your partner is in the kitchen, they're doing the dishes. You come to the kitchen so excited. You tell them about this new book that you just read and finished. You're so excited. And you tell them, oh my God, I need to tell you about what happened with this character. And then suddenly your partner turns away, continues doing the dishes, and says, I need a minute, right? Or ignores you. In that moment, our body perceives that disconnection in our relationship. Let's go with partner A. Partner A, which is a pursuer, we call it protesting, right? Partner A pursues, protests, right? And this protesting can look as criticism, anger, frustration, right? In that moment, the partner goes, "You always do this. You never listen to me. Nothing that I say is important to you. I'm so mad at you. Why can you just be there for me?" Right? That this is what's happening in partner A's experience. And we're going to roll with this example that I just made up. So bear with me for the rest of our podcast and video together, okay? So partner A protests, immediately partner B, that's doing the dishes, remember, withdraws, right? And this withdrawing can look at as silence, avoidance, shutting down, changing the subject, right? In that moment, partner B feels overwhelmed and just withdraws. And that withdrawal causes partner A to escalate even more. "You're not listening to me. I'm telling you this. Why are you shutting down? I can't tell you anything. Why is this happening?" The protesting escalates, right? Then the withdrawal escalates. And then there's disconnection. There's a deepened disconnection. And then we leave feeling that interaction with, hmm, my partner's never there for me, for partner A. Or partner B can say, my partner, whatever I do is never good enough for this partner. Oh my God. This all is happening in different interactions. And right now I'm putting an example of a book, A Bid for Connection, dishes. But you name it. It can be over whatever, but underneath, there's always going to be this pursual, withdrawal cycle over and over and over again. And there are moments of connection, right? Don't get me wrong. There are moments of connection. But then again, when there's a perceived disconnection, the cycle escalates again. Now, let's go deeper to what partner A and partner B are experiencing so we can understand a little bit more about how this pursual, protest, withdrawal cycle interacts in the dynamic, right? Because this is, I mean, we're looking at this in a very superficial level, right? This is what we can see. This is what we're observing from the couple. But what's happening underneath? I decided to divide, and this is what I meant when I said that there's a bigger chart that we can maybe go over in another video and comment if you would like this. Um, but I like to divide it for what we can see and the things that we don't see, right? The things that are superficial that we're observing in the dynamic and the things that we are not observing in the dynamic. Let's understand more partner A, right? The pursuer or the protester. So what are some things that we see? The behavior, right? The behavior are the things that we're seeing from this partner. The behavior as criticism, repetition. I've told this a million times. I keep telling you, you don't listen, right? The sense of urgency. You need to pay attention to me right now. Let's fix this disconnection. I'm yelling for your attention, right? A heightened tone, right? "I always do this for you. You never do this for me," right? We go back into this behavior, right? We can see the anger, right? The secondary emotion. We call it secondary because it's the emotion that we can see that's palpable. It's the anger, it's the frustration, it's the irritation, right? And we see it. I'm telling you, when I see these couples in my office, I see them, right? Roll their eyes, feeling so frustrated. "I always do this. Please help me." Almost desperate, right? "I'm trying to get my other partner to listen to me." Now, these are the things that we see. What are some of the things that we don't see, right? What's underneath the surface? Let's go deep down. From the secondary emotion, which is anger and frustration and irritation, the primary emotion, the deepest emotion, the vulnerable emotion that partner A is feeling is a fear of abandonment. It's loneliness, it's anxiety. It's this idea that they don't matter. I don't matter to my partner. I'm not important enough for my partner. Whew, all of this is partner A experiencing this, right? Now, this is very important for me to highlight. Partner A might not be as aware that this is what's happening underneath the surface, right? Because they're experiencing what we see, the secondary emotion, much louder than the primary emotion, right? The secondary emotion is a protective part, right? That comes out as pursuing, But the secondary emotion is there to protect us, right? So when the anger is telling us a boundary has been crossed or I'm not being taken into consideration, right? And this primary emotion gets triggered underneath, that partner you might not be seeing, but we know it's there, right? I feel lonely in this relationship. Every time, for example, in this couple, it could come off as every time I try to connect with you and tell you some of my interests, you disconnect and I feel like I don't matter to you. And all of this is happening because there's an unmet attachment need. This is where attachment comes up, right? The need for reassurance, the need for emotional responsiveness, the need to feel chosen, the need to feel prioritized. All of this is happening in the dynamic, and we don't see that, right? In that moment, partner B doesn't see that partner A so desperately wants to feel chosen, wants to feel prioritized, wants to feel like they're important, right? Partner B can see that. The only thing that partner's seeing is, I'm not a good enough, right? She's criticizing me. He's criticizing me. There's a sense of urgency. It's always on their timeline, right? She's angry at me. She's always frustrated at me, right? That's what we're seeing. That's what partner B experiences. But underneath the surface is all of these things that we don't see. Now, here's where it gets interesting. This is why the cycle is so complex. I want to say, I wanted to say interesting, but I'm going to lead with complex, right? Because so many things are happening at the same time, and yet we're stuck in the things that we cannot see and in the content part of it, right? It doesn't matter if the partner was doing the dishes or if the conversation was about a book, right? That's not important. This is why I'm telling you that even though we're fighting about different things, the the base is the same, right? We keep having the same fight over and over, even though we're fighting about the dishes or about recitals or about lunches, right? It doesn't matter. That's a content. We're going into process. We're transferring and understanding what's happening in the process part of it, right? In our dynamics systemically, right? So this is partner A. Now let's understand more partner B, the person that withdraws. What are some things that we see? Again, we see the silence, we see the avoidance, we notice shutting down, changing the subject. The secondary emotion could be numbness, irritation, defensiveness. I would add overwhelm, right? I'm feeling overwhelmed. Um, and therefore I get defensive, right? I feel numb. Yeah, she always says this, right? Or he always says this all of the time, right? And by the way, this is not gender tied. I'm sorry that I'm speaking in such heteronormative language. I do apologize for that. This is not gender tied. I think it's easy for me to set it in the example, but it doesn't mean that if you're a woman, you're going to be the pursuer. If you're the withdrawer, you're going to be a man. Okay. This is not heteronormative. This happens regardless of gender, sex, and age. There are some things, of course, that um, some factors that, of course, right, impact our systems and our protective parts, right? And also, I will also like to add that if you're a withdrawer, it doesn't mean that you're always going to withdraw. And if you're a pursuer, it doesn't mean that you're always going to pursue, right? This depends on the fight, on the contest, on the content, right, of the fight, on how we're showing up in the relationship and in the dynamic. So, what are some things in partner B that we are not seeing in the dynamic? So the primary emotion that partner B is feeling is shame, fear of failing, feeling overwhelmed, I'm not good enough, right? Inadequate, abandoned, not seen, right? These are some of the things that the withdrawer is experiencing as a primary emotion. Remember, the primary emotion is the most vulnerable one, right? The deepest one. And then all of this is tied, right? Why did this start, right? Because there's an unmet attachment need that's happening in the dynamic. So all this started because partner B, right? The unmet attachment need that he or she is experiencing is to feel competent, to feel accepted, to have emotional safety, to have space without rejection, right? To be loved, even in moments where they make a mistake, right? That's the unmet attachment need. Now, how did all of this, how did we land here? And I hope that that you all are following me in this dynamic that I'm trying to explain. Like I said, this is a complex cycle. But how does all of this show up in the protest or in the pursual withdrawal cycle? So all of this shows up this way, right? Partner A protests, criticizes, there's anger, there's frustration. Then partner B withdraws, there's silence, avoidance, shutting down, changing the subject. And underneath all of that, we're seeing unmet attachment needs, we're seeing primary emotions, and we're seeing protective parts interacting with each other. Let me say, and this is very important, that partner A and partner B don't choose to pursue or withdraw out of nowhere. Pursuing and withdrawing are protective parts, right? They show up to protect us from this unmet attachment need and from this primary emotion, right? They're protecting this fear of abandonment. I feel the disconnection, therefore, I'm angry and frustrated. Therefore, I'm going to criticize, I'm going to pursue, I'm going to be there for my partner. I'm going to poke him or poke her and say, hey, look at me, I'm here, right? We're protesting. Then partner B, right, is feeling all of this, is feeling shame, is feeling failure, is feeling overwhelmed, right? I'm not good enough of a partner. Then the protectiveness comes up, right? I shut down. I withdraw. I cannot deal with this. This feeling of feeling inadequate is too much for me. This feeling of feeling lonely is too much for me. So, therefore, our protective parts interact with each other. And here's where it gets interesting. Your protective parts trigger each other. Okay, I want you to ask yourself this question today. If you're a withdrawer, you identify yourself as a withdrawer sometimes in the cycle. When your partner protests, how do you feel? Right? Oh, you're going to withdraw even more, right? And then when she continues to protest or he continues to protest, I'm going to withdraw even more. And then when you're the pursuer, when your partner withdraws, right, that protective part also triggers this disconnection, therefore intensifies the cycle over and over and over again, right? This is what's happening underneath the things that we're not seeing, right? This is underneath the surface. I hope you're all still following me. I know I I get too passionate about this subject for sure. And I hope you all are still following the things that I'm trying to say. And if you have any questions, please, of course, my DMs are always open. You can comment on this video or comment on Spotify, and I will make sure to answer as best as my capacity. Okay, now let's talk about the nervous system loop, right? Because this is something that even though we are seeing the cycle, right, there's also something to be said about how we're responding to the cycle. Sometimes we can break the cycle, right? And sometimes we can say, well, I don't feel like withdrawing. I'm actually in my window of tolerance, right? And I work with this in my couples a lot, right? My window of tolerance, window of engagement, which is a whole nother video that I can make about and a whole nother topic. But in this window of tolerance, I notice myself, right? I'm getting defensive, but I can self-regulate, not withdraw, and bring myself back into the present and hear my partner and understand my partner and see my partner, right? Or partner A could say, hey, I'm also in my window of tolerance. I notice that I'm criticizing. I notice that I'm pushing. I can take a step back and say, we're ready for when you want to listen. I can give you your space and we can resolve this issue and say, hey, I know it feels like I'm criticizing you. Are you noticing this way? And then we can connect, right? This can happen, of course, right? And we don't always go into this pursual withdrawal cycle. Sometimes we're able to step out of it, right? Which is hopefully something that we're going to learn today, right? How to step out of this protest withdrawal cycle. But sometimes we can't. Why can't we? Because of our nervous system. Let's talk about it. There's an attachment threat. We feel hyperactivated or deactivated, right? In the window of tolerance, it would be hyper aroused or hypo aroused. There's escalation, and then there's co-dysregulation. This is biology. This is not intentional harm, right? Your partner, unless they have a personality adaptation, your partner is not saying, I want to harm my partner, so I'm going to do this, right? Rather, you're experiencing, oh, wow, I'm feeling really triggered. I'm feeling really activated, right? Or I'm feeling really withdraw. And then we escalate and then we co-dysregulate, right? Once dysregulated, our whole interpretation becomes distorted. It becomes distorted. This is just the truth, right? Our prefrontal cortex deactivates because our amygdala gets triggered, right? Because there's threat. Of course, we don't know the difference between a bear chasing us versus fighting with our partners. Our brain is not prepared for that. So, without a doubt, our interpretation becomes distorted. Tone sounds harsher, right? Ah, you're going again with this tone. Silence feels more rejecting, right? See, you're quieting down. I see you rejecting me. Intent gets misread. And this is why fights escalate so quickly. And I see it, right? I see it in my office, and some of my clients don't like it when I do this, but I still do it. I tell them, hey, we're going out of our window of tolerance. Let's come back. Let's regulate and come back to the fight. Let's come back to the argument, right? Because when we're dysregulated, when we're feeling all of this, we cannot problem solve. That's just a reality. There's not a world where we can actually reach a solution in our fight or in our disagreement when we're feeling activated. And this is also what's keeping us in our cycle, right? Now, it could be that one partner, and I want you to have agency and feel accountable and also empowered because you can make a difference in the system. No matter your partner, right? And I don't want you sending this video to your partner being like, hey, this is all your fault. This is not my intent, okay, with this video. My intent rather is to give you agency and say, oh, wait, I can change the cycle. If I'm feeling if I'm feeling regulated, I can help regulate the system and the cycle and stop rather the cycle. Okay. Now let's understand what happens in the brain. The attachment threat activates the amygdala, right? The sympathetic nervous system gets triggered, and there's a reduced prefrontal regulation, right? I cannot regulate myself. I'm huffing and puffing. I'm so mad, right? Remember those fights where you're like, oh my God, I cannot believe I did that. Or why did I interpret this way? It's because we are feeling this stress, right? It's because we're experiencing all of these feelings come up. Now, when stress rises, our logical processing decreases, the defensiveness increases, the emotional intensity heightens, right? Our nervous system reacts faster than your relationship skills. Of course, right? The brain doesn't care about your regulation skills or your communication skills, right? Your brain doesn't care about using I statements or not blaming your partner. In the moment, you are so triggered that your nervous system's triggered. And the most important part is survival, and survival means connection. And if there's a threat to connection, we're going to do whatever we can to go back and connect, right? Which is the opposite of what we actually should be doing, right? Does that make sense? I hope it does. So this is what we are experiencing in the brain. This is really interesting. And this is precisely why the cycle repeats itself, right? Because our whole nervous system's dysregulated, right? My protective parts are fighting your protective parts. I can't understand your point. Whatever you say, I'm going to take it as offense. I'm going to feel withdrawal. I'm going to pursue. I'm going to feel defensive. All of these things are interacting with each other. And this is why the cycle repeats, right? Remember, like I said, each partner's coping or protective strategies confirms the other one's fear. When I bring something up important, you withdraw, it's because you don't care, right? When I withdraw, I'm alone or I'm never good enough for my partner, right? So short-term protection strengthens long-term distance. Ooh, let's say that again. Short-term protection strengthens long-term distance. So no matter if your brain wants to protect you in the moment, and it's doing a great job at protecting you, by the way, let's appreciate that protection. But in the moment, it's protecting us in the moment, but then in the long run, it's only, it's not strengthening the connection. It's strengthening the disconnection. Okay. So let's talk about the EFT reframe. Like I said at the beginning of the video or of the podcast, Sue Johnson, her framework, which I really love, is that the problem is not our partner, right? It's not, oh, you get so triggered, you should work on yourself, right? It's rather the problem is the cycle, right? The interaction pattern is a problem. It's us versus a cycle. It's not you versus me, right? That's not helpful. And that doesn't, this is not a competition, right? What matters most, right? Being right or feeling connected to your partner, right? Being right or the relationship. What matters most to you, right? So what matters most to us is that it's us together against the cycle. Now, how, right, with all of this information, and I hope you guys are still here with me. If you're not, please, I do apologize um, for my way of explaining things, but this is such an interesting topic and such a complex topic, and I'm sure that you all are here to understand the cycle, yes, but also most importantly, how do we change the pattern? How do we interrupt the pattern? How do we stop fighting this way? So first things first is we de-escalate, right? We need to reduce the sympathetic activation before problem solving, right? Like we saw when we looked at the brain, our brains are thinking faster than us. That sounded crazy. Our nervous system thinks faster than the rational mind or acts faster than the rational mind, right? So we need to de-escalate. We need to self-regulate. We need to restore our nervous system balance so we can actually listen, not to respond, rather to understand. I'm here with you. I'm listening. I want to see. I'm curious, right? I'm curious about your experience. What about me makes you feel like you're not good enough, right? I'm curious about that. What about our interaction leaves you feeling like you need to pursue me more, like you're lonely, like you feel abandoned, right? What's happening? That's our curious mind. That's our prefrontal cortex reacting. But we cannot reach this if this is triggered, right? We cannot reach the prefrontal cortex if our amygdalas are screaming, if we're feeling dysregulated, right? So first things first, we need to self-regulate. And we can call out the pattern. This has been something that, at least for me, has been really helpful. I'm noticing myself get defensive in this cycle. I'm going to stop, take a breather, and come back to the conversation. I'm noticing myself shutting down. I'm feeling rejected by you. I'm going to stop, take a breather, and come back to the conversation, right? Then we lead with the primary emotion. Let's go back to the cycle. If we're leading with criticism, if we're leading with anger, if we're leading with frustration, our partner is immediately not going to hear that, right? They're not going to listen to us. They're not going to listen to understand. They're going to become defensive, right? And I do want to clarify that anger is an appropriate and more than welcome emotion, right? Anger is not the problem. The problem is how we're approaching our partner, right? So if your primary emotion is anger, which can also happen, you can lead with anger and say, I'm really angry at you, right? Because I feel hurt. My boundaries are being crossed. I'm angry that you disappointed me. I'm angry that there was a rupture in our relationship and it feels like you don't care. That's how I'm feeling, right? We can share our primary emotion instead of, you always do this, you never care for our relationship. F you for doing this, right? That's not helpful. That's not, our partner will never listen to us this way. And this is not going to help, right? So we express our primary emotion. We share our attachment fear instead of the protective. This says protest, but instead of the protective behavior. And then we offer emotional responsiveness, right? We validate, we reassure, we remain engaged. Connection repairs when vulnerability is met with safety. And if we're feeling, right, and this is one of the mistakes that my couples do, right, or I see couples making a lot, if things are activated, remember, when things are activated, we're just going to lead to code dysregulation and then not being able to have this emotional safety. In order to repair, there has to be emotional safety. Are you here with me? Are we still connected with each other, right? Are you here with curiosity, right? Even though you don't agree, you cannot agree with the content, and yet you can still listen to my feelings and validate my feelings and acknowledge my side, right? So connection repairs when vulnerability is met with safety. Our goal is to promote this emotional safety, right? Now, what are some other strategies that help shift the cycle? We notice a pattern, like I said, we become aware when we're slipping into our usual roles. Wait a minute, whoa, ooh, I'm becoming really mean towards you. I really want to say mean things to you. And I'm stopping myself because this is my defensiveness speaking, right? Or wow, ooh, I'm noticing myself shutting down. I cannot hear you right now. I'm triggered. I feel a sense in my chest. I feel this pressure in my chest and I feel like I want to cry and I'm just withdrawing. I'm not here, right? The emotions taking over. So we notice a pattern. And an exercise that I want to leave you guys for today also is to start to become familiar with your protective part, right? How does it show up? And I want you to be specific. When I'm pursuing, it feels like this anger that I just need to pursue. I need to keep poking, right? I feel it in my chest because my chest feels tight and I feel like shutting down. I feel numb. I don't feel anything, right? Let's start to be familiar with our protective parts because the more familiar we get, the more self-aware we get, and then the more we can notice and change the pattern, okay? We slow the moment. We slow it down. Sue Johnson said it. Let's slow it down. And I swear I have a post-it in my computer that says slow it down, right? Because sometimes I get hooked, right? In the moment with my couples, right? And in the moment, it's just like, let's go for the resolution. But we cannot fix anything when there is an intensity at a 10, right? We need to come down to a 3 before we try to fix anything, before we try to have productive conversations. We go beneath the anger. We share what feels vulnerable or tender. I feel really, really lonely right now. Whew. You know what? I'm noticing that I'm chasing you because I feel not chosen in a relationship. And I so desperately want you to see me and choose me that I'm chasing you. And I just want that reassurance. That's why I'm pursuing you, right? Unless our partner is not in a position to hear us and is also triggered, our partner is going to soften towards us if we share that vulnerability. We offer presence, right? We cannot expect our partners to give us what we cannot give to the relationship. So we offer presence. We stay emotionally available, right? Ooh, wait, I'm noticing this. Yep, I'm feeling triggered. I'm gonna go take a walk for 5 minutes and then come back. I'm gonna go to the bathroom. I'm gonna, I need a hug, right? I'm gonna take a deep breather. I'm gonna watch an episode of a TV show and then come back to the conversation, right? And also always come back. We're not using avoidance, right? We're just self-regulating. And then we stay emotionally available. And this is why this is so powerful. And this is why I'm so passionate about this. Because even though your partner's not changing, right? And that could happen, your partner cannot change and we can fall into the same cycle. We have the agency, the accountability, and the power to change the cycle just by changing all of this, just by being self-aware, just by not engaging in the cycle, or rather engaging differently, right? We repair before we have resolution, right? Safety first, solutions later. It doesn't matter who put the freaking dishes last night. It doesn't matter who left the dog outside. The dog's safe, right? You're safe. The world's not going to end. It doesn't matter if you're right. It doesn't matter. What matters is safety. What matters is a connection. What matters is a relationship, right? So let's build that safety first. Then later we can figure out and create a system so the dog is not outside. We can create a system so you can do the dishes every night. We can create a system that helps us connect with each other and feel safe. But we cannot do that when all of this is happening and when there's this emotional unsafety, right? When there's these unmet attachment needs, or I don't feel that with you. We cannot reach those agreements, right? We need to build that safety first. Okay. Connection changes the pattern. Connection changes the pattern. Now, remember, every couple, and I always say this, right? Every couple, every person in your life, right? Even with yourself, I would like to say, and I'm getting a little existential here, bear with me, but we all go through the cycle of connection, disconnection, reconnection, connection, disconnection, reconnection. We all go through the cycle, right? We're going to feel disconnected. That's going to happen. Naturally, we're humans, right? It's supposed to happen. The point is not disconnection. The point is, how do we reconnect again? How can we reach that connection again with myself, right? For example, when I'm in sessions and sometimes I notice myself drifting, and I notice it's because I haven't listened to my body cues and I'm so hungry and I can't wait for lunch, right? And I notice that disconnection from myself and I take a breather. I look at my trail mix that I have actually right here for those of us looking at it in the video in YouTube. I have my trail mix right here because I know myself. And I take a snack. I say to my client, I'm sorry. And I connect back again with myself, right? Okay, I'm hungry. I notice the disconnection. I wasn't paying attention and I repair, right? I eat, I come back and I connect with myself again. The same with our partners, right? I notice the disconnection with my partner. How do I want to reconnect? Through pursuing, through withdrawing, right? Through yelling, through criticizing, through blaming? Or do I want to connect with love, with care, with intention, right? How do we connect with each other when this moment is happening? Another thing that's really important for me to say also is that the cycle will appear again, even though we've worked on it. And after this video or podcast, if you're listening to it, I hope that you feel confident enough to change the cycle. But the cycle will appear again. And sometimes that feels discouraging to my clients. Sometimes it feels validating. It will happen again. The point is not to prevent the cycle. The point is to notice it, right? I'm noticing this, right? And I'm changing it. This takes time. This change takes time. We need to rewire our brains. We have to create new neural connections, new ways of relating to each other. And this will take time. But in the end, it will all be worth it. It will all be worth it. Okay? So, what does this mean for your relationship? Recurrent conflict, right, as a conclusion, does not mean that you're broken, does not mean that this partner's not supposed to be with you. It doesn't mean that your relationship is doomed. Recurrent conflict means that your attachment needs feel unsafe or not being met, that your nervous systems are protecting and interacting with each other in the moment, that our cycle has become automatic, right? And it's happening over and over again, and I see it. Patterns are learned, patterns can be reshaped, and awareness is a first step towards change. Okay. So if you're listening to this, I hope I offered some type of hope in your relationship and in yourself. And I hope I depathologized your relationship and yourself. And I hope I moved you towards blame and shame to love and compassion. Because when I see two people fighting, I'm not seeing the intensity, right? I'm seeing their nervous system being activated. I'm seeing their inner childs interacting with each other. I'm seeing their attachment needs needing to feel safe with each other. I'm seeing the love that they have for each other. I'm seeing how desperately they want to be connected, right? So let's connect to that. Let's connect to that. Thank you so much for being here today. Here are some resources if you're going through this. If this content felt supportive, right? These are some resources that might resonate. The first is this book from Sue Johnson, Hold Me Tight, The Science of Trust by John Gottman. The book Attached, right? The Polyvagal Theory and Therapy by Deb Dana. Deb Dana has also another book that I love to use called Anchored or Anchoring, Anchored or Anchoring. Such a good book. You are not alone in this work, right? Support and tools are always available to you. And of course, if you would like me to expand more on something else, please shoot me a DM, a comment in the video. If you like this video, if you like this podcast, this episode, subscribe, like, share. And yeah, thank you all for being here with me today. I appreciate you all, and I will see you soon in our next video. Thank you all for being here today. I will see you soon in our next video.